So I finished the back stitching on my pencil case. You can see where my first join of thread was, or the ending of my first thread and the beginning of my next thread, and you'll see I had to do the same over here. So I had to stop and start twice, and I've finished up right at the top. Just a reminder to do a few extra stitches just over these points here at the ends of the zip for extra strength. Okay, and I've sewn from the very top up at that fold right around to the fold on the other side. Okay, and if you flip it over, your stitches should look a little bit like this. Okay, not too messy. And we're up to the final step, the final stage of your pencil case, and that is to whip stitch over the top of those three edges that we've just back stitched. Not over the top of the fold, we don't need that, but we certainly need them. You can actually see the fabric starting to fray here. Now before we start the whip stitch, I'm actually just going to trim those frayed yarns off because they get in the way of your whip stitch. So I'm just going to run my scissors just along the edge of the fabric, and I'm just going to trim it. And if your zipper's sort of hanging over the edge of the fabric as well, you can trim that so it's in line with the edge of the fabric. Okay, just clean that away. So you can see I've cut the frayed edges, the frayed thread yarns they're called, the frayed yarns away. And I'm going to do the same along this edge. So just slide your scissors right along the edge. You don't have to cut anything off your the edge of your pencil case, any actual fabric, unless you think your edges are a little bit uneven, because we want to match them up. We want the two edges to be in line with each other. Okay, so I'm just going to trim the final edge back. I'm going to cut through the zipper just so it's the same in line with the edge of the seam allowance. Okay, we'll clear that all away. Okay, so up to whip stitching. So just a reminder about whip stitching, that we actually do that backwards. So if you're a righty, you're going to start on the left hand side and you're going to whip stitch backwards towards the right hand side. And if you're a lefty, you're going to start on this end. You're going to start on the right hand side and you're going to whip stitch back towards the left hand side. Okay, so once again, I'm a righty. I've got my thread, my needle threaded up. I've got my anchoring knots in the end. I'm going to do a few extra anchoring stitches just to make sure that my thread is secure, so that it doesn't, oops, just catching some extra thread there. Just do a couple of stitches on top of each other to get it started. There's one, I'll do one more there, exactly on top of, oops, just missed the knot. It's a bit difficult to stitch through the actual knot. That will give you some problems. Okay, so I'm secured and ready to go. So what I'm going to do is exactly what I've done before with my whip stitching, on both the seam allowance here for the zipper and on my practice stitching. I'm going to hold my stitch on an angle with my left hand. If you're a lefty, you're holding it with your right hand. And I'm actually going to go over and through both layers of fabric this time. I'm stitching them together. I'm stitching both edges of my seam allowance together. Hold it in place there with your non-dominant hand. And we do the same thing. We continue right over the top of the zippers, the zipper tape, I mean. We've only got one zipper there, but two zipper tapes. Hold it in place. A bit difficult for you to see what I'm doing, but I'm really just continuing the same stitch right over the top. So if I flip this over at this point, you can see that the stitches go right through to the other side. So I've stitched my 2 seam edges together. Okay, just going to continue towards the corner. Remember, don't pull your stitch too tight. You want it to sit flat against the fabric so the fabric doesn't pucker. Keep them reasonably close together. It's not a race to get it finished, because if you race, you'll probably have a pencil case that doesn't last very long, unless you're a very experienced sewer. Okay, coming up towards the corner. So it's easy to go around the corner. You should be able to do it in one. You shouldn't have to stop and start. You can if you want to, but you shouldn't have to. I'll show you how to go around the corner. So I'm going to here. Then I'm going to turn my fabric around like this. And I'm just going to continue on my way. Just keep doing what you were doing the whole way along. Now you will also find you'll need to stop and start your thread. You'll run out of thread before you get to the end of your pencil case, because we use quite a bit of thread when doing whip stitch. So once again, stop when you've got 3 or 4 needle lengths of thread left, and finish off your stitch with a good secure series of stitches and a knot at the end, and then thread your needle up and continue going. And we just continue on like that.